As I flip through the pages of an old family photo album, a wave of nostalgia washes over me. The scent of aged paper mingles with the brewing coffee in the kitchen, creating an inviting moment. There he is, Robert as a wide-eyed child, his gap-toothed smile illuminated by the sun, holding a trophy for most improved. I close my eyes, hearing the echoes of his laughter and feeling the warmth of those simple yet precious days. Back then, my life revolved around him. I remember late nights at the diner, my apron stained with grease, every dollar I earned poured into his future. I sacrificed social outings, rising before dawn to bake fresh croissants that would replace the cold cereal on our breakfast table. His delight as he devoured the fluffy pastries brought me joy, every bite a small victory for both of us. I attended every school meeting, sitting proudly beside him as teachers praised his commitment and spirit. I cheered from the sidelines on game days, wearing my heart on my sleeve with every play. My pride swelled with the victories he earned, as they felt like my own achievements crafted from years of love and support. Yet, as I turn the page, nostalgia melds with sorrow. After Jane entered our lives, the laughter faded. The joyful noise of our home transformed into a strangled silence. Family dinners became battlegrounds of ego and ambition, and not long after their wedding, I felt the cruelest shift beneath my feet. I'll never forget that first family meal after they returned from their honeymoon. The table, set with the china I cherished, felt like an offering rejected by wasps. Jane held court effortlessly, her confident laughter dominating our conversations. With every quip about my cooking, I felt my worth crumbling, her words sharp as knives. "Pot roast again, Margaret? You know it's much more sophisticated at my gatherings," she remarked, a mocking tone drenching her smile. In that moment, I felt invisible, Robert's laughter ringing in my ears just as loudly as my own silence. I watched, swallowed by my own nostalgia for better days, the love and effort draining away as I became an afterthought. As the years passed, dinner became a solitary endeavor. I found myself cooking for a ghost of a family, only to be met with accolades for Jane's accomplishments while my own efforts faded into the background. Their playful arguments filled the home, and the giggles of my grandchildren floated lightly through the rooms, yet I stood distant and unheard, a forgotten sentinel. At times I questioned whether Jane's remarks reflected my own insecurities, but I could no longer ignore her dismissive tone, the laughter of my son cutting through me like a blade. Each chuckle he offered in agreement with Jane felt like another fracture in my heart, each moment severing the bond we once held dear. But amid the shadows of neglect, I felt a flicker of resolve stirring within me. I had fought hard for this family, layered in love and sacrifice. I whispered to myself, I will not remain unnoticed. My history matters. My legacy is worth reclaiming. And with that thought, I began to see the pathway forward, determined to confront the invisible chains that had held me captive for far too long. Jane first entered our lives with a whirlwind of charm and ambition. From the very first gathering, it was apparent that my world was about to be put on a new axis. I remember the delicious scent of her homemade lasagna wafting through the house, a dish that caught Robert's attention immediately. He floated around her like a moth to a flame, mesmerized by her confidence and drive. I admired her work ethic. She climbed the corporate ladder with remarkable adeptness, proudly sharing her accomplishments at family dinners, where conversation flowed effortlessly from one upward step to the next. However, as her light shone brighter, I felt myself retreating into the shadows, unwittingly relegated to a role I never intended to embrace, that of the overshadowed mother-in-law. It started innocently enough, a few offhand comments that I brushed aside. "Margaret, how lovely that you still use the same old recipes. They certainly remind me of home." Her smile conveyed a cheerful disposition, yet her words oozed with a condescending undertone. "But you know, in this day and age, we have so much more at our fingertips. Maybe you should try something new." The light laughter from Robert was just another chime tuning in to her superiority. At family events, Jane would take control of the narrative, recounting her grand achievements as if they were the only topic of interest. I often felt like a guest in my own home, observing her effortlessly commandeering the attention around the dinner table. The laughter that used to fill our gatherings began to belong exclusively to her stories, and I wondered if my voice ever held meaning anymore. One summer evening, I prepared my trademark vegetable stir-fry, colorful and sautéed with fresh herbs from the garden. I thought it would be a delightful surprise, a reminder of simpler times. With careful hands, I plated it beautifully, arranging the vegetables in a way that spoke of love and effort. Yet Jane's dismissive glance cut through me. "Interesting choice, Margaret. I'm sure the kids will love this, if you season it right, that is." The way she turned back to Robert, urging him to help carry the conversation away from me, felt like a betrayal. I watched as he laughed, oblivious to the disregard boiling within me. The gatherings grew heavier with each interested glance from family. Robert tried to include me when he could, but I could see the division bridging like a canyon, and Jane stood at the edge, having built the walls of separation. The grandkids adored her, their laughter echoing like wind chimes, while I remained the quiet grandmother in the corner. It was as if every shared moment flickered like candlelight about to extinguish. I wanted to believe that Jane was simply enthusiastic, that her ambition came from a place of strength rather than malicious intent. But small dismissals slowly eroded my spirit, her eyes glimmering with a mix of reliance and ridicule. My once vibrant conversations with Robert began to dwindle to simple nods, the ecstatic sharing of daily events reduced to stale exchanges. One particularly poignant memory arises as I sit in a well-lit corner of my kitchen. The scent of fresh bread mingled with the sharpness of garlic, filling the air with all the memories of who we used to be. I envisioned Robert coming home with wild stories of school, eager for my input. Yet, on this evening, I felt his absence weigh heavy. He had gone out with Jane, their agenda unknown. Later, as I served dinner alone, I overheard pieces of their conversation through the open window. Jane speaking so eloquently of her next career move, her laughter spilling like music across the street. All that pierced through my heart was silence, a sepulchral quiet settling over my dining room. My fingers trembled around the delicate china as my thoughts spiraled. Once, I would have been the one engaging in that banter. Now, I felt a gilded cage locking away my rightful place in our family. It was nothing overtly malicious but a growing series of subtle jabs that chipped away at the facade of my existence. Jane was winning. And Robert, he was slipping away, laughing with her, pulling further from my grasp. I wanted so desperately to share my heart with him, show him the past that birthed our family. However, each time I opened my mouth, I felt as though I could barely breach the suffocating silence surrounding me. The holidays came to a head with a mix of hope and dread. As we gathered for Thanksgiving, the familiar flames of the fireplace crackled, illuminating the coziness of the room. The air filled with the comforting aroma of turkey and stuffing. Yet, I kept my heart guarded, aware of the inevitable spotlight falling on Jane once again. She would deliver another monologue of gratitude, punctuated by her successes, reminding everyone where she stood. When she began to speak, I sensed the hush that fell upon the room, an expectation that strained my chest. Would this be the moment that I fought back? Or would I retreat once more, allowing the candle of my voice to flicker in the wind until it dwindled away? The light from the fire flickered across the dining room, painting everything in hues of orange and gold, a stark contrast to the cold gray creeping into my soul. With every bite, I reflected on my choices and began to plan. As I sat there in silence, I vowed to reclaim my legacy, ready to fight against a modern encroachment on my family's history. I couldn't remain a ghost any longer. I had a story worth sharing, but the question lingered. Could I find the courage to reclaim the pieces Jane had taken from me? This would require strategy, a mastery of quiet but steadfast resolve. I would need to navigate the waters ahead with careful precision, preparing myself for the battle that loomed on the horizon. I lingered in the quiet aftermath of that Thanksgiving dinner, the warmth of the fireplace unable to reach the cold shroud wrapping my heart. Long after everyone left, the remnants of my uneaten meal sat like a ghost haunting the table. The dishes lay in a scattered mess, memory triggering echoes of laughter imprinted on the walls. Yet the faces that brightened the room had drifted away, leaving me with the ache of unvoiced thoughts. That night, as the moon hung high in the obsidian sky, I stared at my reflection amidst the glassy kitchen tiles. I had lost more than just my voice. I had lost my identity. I felt the weight of expectations and failed ambitions pressing down on my shoulders. Was I simply to exist as a sidelined observer in the narrative of my family? No, I decided. I would no longer be invisible. A change was brewing within me, a fire ignited by a combination of frustration and determination. I resolved to reclaim my role, not only as a mother but as a matriarch deserving of respect. The plan began to form like a well-constructed recipe in my mind. I needed an approach to restore the balance, to assert my place with grace and tact. First, I noted the family dynamics. Who responded to whom, the patterns of engagement, the subtle sway of influence. It became clear that Jane held sway over Robert in ways that I had previously allowed to happen without protest. I had inadvertently encouraged their intimacy with my silence, unsure of how to navigate the changing tides. But it was time to disrupt that status quo. I spent the next few days preparing, mentally rehearsing the conversations I would have. I considered everything, the words I'd use, the subtle glances I would employ, and the positive reinforcement I would show Robert. I would frame my interventions thoughtfully. Knowing Jane's piercing ability to twist conversations against me meant I needed a calm precision. I might have lost some battles, but there were still wars to be fought. To reclaim my space, I knew I had to showcase my strengths, the skills that defined me as a mother and nurturer. I dusted off my old recipe books, rediscovering cherished dishes that had once drawn my family together. I decided to host a Christmas gathering of my own, one steeped in tradition and bursting with love, not just for Robert but for the grandchildren too, the little ones who reminded me of pure joy. In planning the gathering, I began to strategize every detail. The centerpiece would be a dramatic display of my signature holiday ham, glazed with mustard and brown sugar, its aroma filling the air and evoking taste memories of laughter and warmth. I envisioned a table decked in holiday greens and cranberries, all designed to remind Robert of the comforts of home. As I continued mapping out my plan, I turned my attention to Jane's perceived weaknesses. I started noticing slips, her occasional mistakes when she attempted to mimic my cherished family recipes, her laughter blurring genuine appreciation with smug superiority. I watched as she struggled to assemble a proper pie during a family bake-off. The pie crust crumbled like her patience, the flakiness contrasting with my steady hand perfected over years of practice. This could become part of my approach. Gradually, I began to shift my footing within conversations. I would ask Robert to recall moments from his childhood, drawing his attention back to the stories that defined us. "Remember the time we made the mistake of trying to bake together?" I'd exclaim, a playful smile tugging at my lips. The warmth of those memories would remind him of the bond he and I shared, one that Jane could attempt to fill but would not fully grasp. Each fleeting moment I spoke, I carefully reeled him in, allowing him glimpses of the connection eclipsed by Jane's towering presence. I wouldn't build walls between them. Instead, I would fortify the foundation of my bond with Robert. I would become the answer to the void Jane's dominance created. "Margaret, your time with him matters," I reminded myself, each mantra a reinforcement against despair. I would reclaim my legacy and ensure my story was woven back into the tapestry of our family narrative. As the day of the gathering crept closer, I felt an invigorating blend of anxiety and excitement coursing through my veins. The tightness of my throat signified both fear and determination, yet beneath those nerves was a strong resolve. I knew this Christmas gathering would be my moment not just to cook, but to connect, to reinstate our family values and reassert my role as matriarch. With each carefully prepared dish and every lovingly placed decoration, I set the stage not just for a meal, but for a turning point. I was ready to step off the sidelines and reclaim my narrative. The warmth of the holidays would serve a dual purpose, unifying my family while subtly reminding them of the unbreakable bonds we built long ago. As I tightly wound ribbon around a carefully crafted gift for each family member, I felt the spark of hope growing. This year would not just be about the food consumed, it would be about memories reforged and love rediscovered. I was ready to embrace my place in this family, and most importantly, to show them what dignity looks like when reclaimed. As the clock ticked down to the promised Christmas gathering, I felt the nervous energy wrapping around my stomach like a coiled spring. I had spent so much time in preparation, culinary delights scheduled to simmer, decoration designs aflame with intent, but it was time to delve deeper. I needed more than just a gathering. I required undeniable evidence of Jane's manipulation, something tangible that would reinforce the narrative she spun to eclipse my presence in this family. One evening, after placing the final touches on the dinner table, I took a moment for myself in my favorite nook by the window. I sipped on chamomile tea, letting the warmth seep through me while I recalled scattered moments from the past months. The urgency of observation gripped me. It wasn't enough to simply regain Robert's affection. I needed to understand Jane's tactics and see her actions for what they truly were, not just the surface-level charm, but the layering of egotism masked in control. As I watched, I began to document her subtle manipulations, the small slides of superiority that belied her laughter. For instance, during family conversations, she had this unsettling ability to divert attention, shifting the spotlight away from me in a way that felt orchestrated. I noticed how her smile seemed to linger just a moment longer before settling on Robert, ensuring his laughter echoed around the room while my words trailed off into silence. I could write a script for Jane's performances, the patterns weaving tighter in my mind. I even kept a journal, swirling with thoughts and observations, tracking her words closely, the offhanded comments about my home decor as being so quaint, or the way she would sweep through my kitchen as if inspecting it for her judgment. Each note cascaded into a tapestry of her attempts to control the narrative, and I felt more assured as I pieced it together. One weekend afternoon, I invited Robert for coffee, a casual rendezvous to appear genuine. As the sun warmed the kitchen, we shared laughter over cups, my heart leaping at his returned enthusiasm. I cautiously probed his thoughts on the dynamic between him and Jane. "Do you ever feel we're losing our family traditions?" I asked subtly, as my fingers played with the hem of my apron. Robert paused, tilting his head in reflection. "Well, Jane loves to explore new experiences. She's always pushing things to the next level. I'm proud of her." His voice held not only pride but a hint of unease, as if he was navigating uncharted waters without a map. I wanted to shake him awake, expose the reality hidden beneath the surface, but instead I smiled, nodding along. Yet, as I watched unfurling before me, there was a flicker of doubt in Robert's eyes. It gave me hope that my efforts hadn't gone unnoticed. My subtle jabs through general observations opened a door for him to glance backward at the life we'd shared, one already overlaid by Jane's colorful, disruptive strokes. Days passed, and as Christmas approached, the weight of my research felt increasingly heavy. I found myself obsessively watching Jane, desperate for an opening, a chink in her carefully constructed armor. During family gatherings, I kept my ears attuned to her dismissals, aiming to catalog the betrayals unnoticed. I'd catch her rolling her eyes at my recipes, and I would mark the slight tremor in Robert's expression whenever her laughter filled the room again. Suddenly, an opportunity presented itself, a Saturday lunch at a family friend's home, a trifecta of warmth mingling with cheering guests and playful grandchildren. It was easy to overlook the situation in such a bubbly atmosphere, but I was there to investigate. As I helped set the long dining table, I overheard Jane's conversation with her friend. "Honestly, there's just only so much a person can do to keep things from getting stale. Margaret, sweet as she is, refuses to adapt. It's charming," she said, the words draping off her lips like honey with just the right hint of venom. I felt a spark of indignation flare within me, but instead of reacting, I watched, a warden behind the veil of cordial smiles. With each remark, the simple act of eavesdropping began collecting evidence that couldn't be denied. Jane wielded her manipulation like a weapon, skillfully painting herself as the beloved daughter-in-law, with the world organized around her preferences and accomplishments. My stomach twisted with every word she uttered, weaving a narrative where I became an accessory to her success, an afterthought in the stories she spun. This information created heavy, actionable weight. I could sift through her comments, laying bare the discrepancies in her persona, a conversation starter that would later serve as a cornerstone for our upcoming gathering. With my notes accumulating, I felt emboldened, like I was building my own strategy with only stealthy precision. I realized that Jane's charm was not just superficial. It was the very mask she used to construct her control over not just Robert, but the entire family. Now, as I sat alone in my kitchen late one evening, the winter wind howling outside, I closed my journal and let the weight of determination settle within my chest. I understood the patterns Jane presented, and I developed a plan to expose the cracks within her facade. I would confront her, utilizing her own tactics against her, gently revealing the truths that lay beneath her humor-laced dismissals. I would allow Robert to see the web she spun, the lies cloaked in laughter. What I planned for Christmas dinner wasn't merely food, it was the culmination of a strategy, a celebration of love, intertwined with a delicate unveiling of truths. In the end, I would not only reclaim my voice, but I would encourage my family to listen closely, to pay attention to who truly had their best interests at heart. This Christmas wouldn't just renew our traditions, it would reclaim our family narrative, bringing light back to shadows that threatened to consume us. With my quiet resolve, I felt a sense of dignity flooding back, and with it, the promise of reclamation. As the Christmas gathering approached, every nerve in my body hummed with anticipation. This year was different. I had spent countless hours perfecting the decor and cooking recipes handed down through generations, each dish simmered with intention and care. But this time, the depth of my preparation extended beyond the culinary. Each part of the meal was tied to a feeling, a memory, a promise that spoke not just of celebrating together, but of standing my ground against the changes that Jane had forced upon us. The day before Christmas, I arranged the dining room with meticulous attention, layers of evergreen garlands draping across the table, flanked by candles that flickered like the hopes I held for my family. The scent of baked goods wafted through the air, entwining with the sweet notes of simmering cider. It was a tapestry of love and history, a foundation I was desperate to preserve amidst the chaos Jane seemed to invite. When the doorbell chimed on Christmas Eve, my heart quickened. I opened the door to find Robert, his laughter threading through the air like music, instantly enhancing the warmth of the home. "Wow, Mom, this looks fantastic," he exclaimed, filling the space with a jovial presence that I desperately needed. But just behind him was Jane, her laugh like ice tinkling against glass, as absurdly cheerful as ever. "Charming decor, Margaret," she pronounced, a tight smile on her face that barely concealed the ongoing competition she engaged in with everything I did. I felt a surge of tension as I welcomed them in, aware that this delicate balance I was crafting could be easily disrupted by her mere presence. Yet, I pushed past it, determined to anchor my family in the traditions I held dear. As we settled in, I worked to create an atmosphere thick with laughter and shared memories. Remember the Christmas we tried to make that massive gingerbread house? We ended up with more icing on us than on the house, I quipped, catching Robert in a moment of nostalgia that sparked a grin as he recalled the fiasco with fondness. The stories flowed, filled with memories that needed to be told, and for a moment I basked in the warmth of Robert's laughter. I caught glimpses of Jane's tight-lipped smile, her irritation bubbling just beneath the surface as the ease of shared history challenged the narrative she sought to spin. I sensed her tension, a storm cloud looming closer with every chuckle that erupted. At the dinner table, I felt the atmosphere shift. The conversation turned towards favorite Christmas memories, and I invited Robert to share his while subtly connecting each story to the values we cherished. "What do you think the best part of Christmas is?" I asked him, my heart pounding with hope that he would recognize the importance of our traditions. He pondered for just a moment. "Honestly, I think it's about family being together and creating those unforgettable moments." My heart fluttered. The words felt like victory as I watched Jane's mask slip momentarily, her fingers tightening around her glass of wine. I decided to lean in. "You're right, Robert, and it's our traditions that keep us rooted." As I spoke, I felt courage welling inside me. I was firming up my stance, ready to reclaim my voice without dismissing the love I held for him and my family. However, it was during dessert that the turning point materialized. As we shared slices of my famous chocolate cake, I sensed Jane's anxiety heightening. Amidst the sugary whispers and clinking forks, I felt compelled to address the elephant in the room, the underlying strains that had twisted our family dynamic. I drew a deep, steadying breath. "Jane," I began, the words tumbling from my heart, "there's something that I've noticed in our family gatherings lately. I love how you bring your energy into our home, but I can't help but feel that our history seems to get lost along the way." The room fell silent, all eyes darting between us. Jane's facade flickered, her bright smile failing to mask the tension surging beneath. "What do you mean?" she asked, though the edge in her voice betrayed her ruffled composure. I pressed on, hoping to anchor this moment in truth. I felt sidelined at times, like the memories we share and the values we built as a family are being overshadowed. My voice trembled slightly, but I refused to back down. Traditions are what keep us connected, and they matter deeply. Robert shifted in his seat, brow furrowed as he processed my words. I turned to him, locking eyes in a moment of understanding. "You remember the stories, right?" I asked, inviting him into the conversation. "How they shaped who we are." He nodded slowly, his gaze darting to Jane. "Yeah, I do." His voice, while soft, carried enough weight to instill a flicker of hope within me. Jane's expression morphed, anger and embarrassment blending into a stormy brew that threatened to upend the evening. "That's not fair, Margaret. Change is good, and you can't just hang on to the past," she snapped defensively. My heart raced as I felt the walls narrowing around us. "Change can be good, but not at the expense of our roots," I countered, conveying calmness despite the rising tension. Robert interjected, "It's not about erasing the past, Jane. We can appreciate the new while valuing the old." His voice held conviction, echoing my sentiments and translating our shared history into the present. The atmosphere thickened, resonating with palpable understanding. With each exchange, I felt Jane's carefully crafted armor begin to crack. This Christmas dinner wasn't just about food or decorations. It had transformed into a platform for laying bare the complex reality of our interactions, unveiling truths laced with love. I felt powerful then, standing alongside Robert, united in our recognition of what truly mattered. I turned to Jane one last time. "I believe we can find a way to blend the old with the new," I offered gently. "But we shouldn't dismiss those who came before us. They paved the way for a reason." In that moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Jane's eyes, and I experienced a rare glimmer of triumph. "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart," I reminded myself, encapsulating the resolve that surged within me. As dessert plates were cleared, I caught the subtle nod from Robert, a reassurance that we could rebuild our family bonds while respecting our past. The window had opened, allowing light into the dark corners that Jane's influence had cast shadow upon. Slowly but surely, I could feel the spirit of Christmas reawakening, infused with the possibility of renewal. This wasn't the end of the journey, but a courageous step toward forging a deeper connection with those who mattered most. In the spellbinding glow of candlelight, dignity felt not just attainable but imminent, awaiting our next meal together, firmly anchored in both love and truth. The following week unfolded just like the soft emergence of spring after a long winter, yet a chill of unresolved tension still lingered in my mind. Once again, I orchestrated a family gathering, a proactive step to sustain the momentum from our last dinner. My aim was clear: to confront Jane's influence gradually while inviting my family to reflect and reconnect with our roots. As I prepared, every item I selected for the table felt drenched in purpose. The fresh linens, gleaming crystal glasses, and a succulent roast were not merely decorations. They formed a tapestry illustrating how love and family history wove together over the years. This gathering would be more than a meal. It would be an opportunity to reshape our narrative into one reflecting unity and truth. On the day of the gathering, I awoke early, sunlight filtering through the kitchen window. I immersed myself in preparations, the warmth of the sun invigorating my spirit. Each dish I prepared was purposefully chosen, blending traditions with new ideas I hoped would resonate with everyone. As I set the dining table, adorned with cherished heirlooms, memories enveloped me. Each dish represented the sacrifices made and love shared, serving as a reminder of the foundation upon which our family was built. Before long, the doorbell chimed, a familiar sound that sent a thrill rushing through my chest. Jane entered, her confident stride cutting through my carefully crafted, warm atmosphere. Her laughter ricocheted off the walls, a sharp contrast to the comfort I tried to cultivate. "Such a cozy touch, Margaret," she exclaimed, her smile tight and betrayed by the hint of sarcasm underneath. I met her gaze with a practiced smile, endeavoring to maintain a sense of poise amidst her ongoing condescension. "Thank you, Jane. I'm glad you could join us," I replied, letting warmth seep into my voice. As the evening flowed into dinner, I nudged our conversations toward deep-seated values, family generosity, lessons of forgiveness, and simply being together in love. Each topic added a layer to a flourishing atmosphere, a tapestry of shared experiences threaded throughout our gathering. Yet, as the conversation blossomed, I sensed Jane's discomfort. Her posture tightened with every anecdote I shared, each laugh echoing with nostalgia. Still, I held firm, channeling my energy toward Robert, hoping he would lean into the recognition of our family's essence. "Mom, this roast is incredible!" Robert beamed as he savored a bite, his eyes lighting up with delight, drawing my heart into a realm of warmth. "It reminds me of how you always made these special for us." Encouraged by his affection, I turned to Jane. "It's our family's heritage, a recipe passed down through generations. Do you enjoy cooking this way too?" I probed gently, hoping to create a moment of connection beyond our underlying tensions. Jane brushed me aside with a flick of her wrist. "Oh, please, it's nice, but there's so much more to cooking than tradition," she shot back, her tone dismissive. I recognized her discomfort as I felt a familiar rush of tension shifting through the air. I took a breath, steadying my resolve. "Change can be positive, Jane, but not if it comes at the expense of our roots." I framed my words politely but firmly, hoping to guide her thoughts toward a more constructive dialogue. My heart raced, waiting for Robert's response, a small flicker of hope igniting as I watched him pause, reflecting on the contrast. "It's not about erasing our past. We can appreciate the new while valuing the old," Robert chimed in, echoing my sentiment with an unexpected depth. My heart swelled with warmth. Perhaps we were building a shared understanding. Emboldened, I continued, "Our family stories matter, Jane. They hold the threads that connect us, and it's important we don't let them slip away." Her lips pressed together into a thin line as she absorbed the rising tension, fueled by Robert's growing involvement. With dessert approaching, a glistening apple pie, I shared a story of how Robert and I made it together when he was little. "Remember how we always fought over whether to add cinnamon or not?" I chuckled, drawing a grin from him that echoed with nostalgia. "Cinnamon definitely made it better," Robert quipped, his laughter spilling into the air, wrapping us in a moment of familial warmth. I could feel the atmosphere transforming, the stress dissipating like steam from a warm pot. Yet I sensed Jane's annoyance bubble just beneath the surface, her attempts to infiltrate our exchanges thwarted by the bond we were reestablishing. My stomach tightened as I handled her irritation, yet I proceeded to firmly invite my family into meaningful reflections. "What do we hold close to our hearts as a family?" I asked, promoting conversation around shared values. The air thickened with recognition as Robert offered honestly and meaningfully that keeping our cherished memories alive created a stronger foundation for us. "It all connects. It builds us," he acknowledged, uncertainty lifting from Jane's expression, even as she struggled to maintain her facade of control. As conversation flowed, I took risks, honoring our history while carefully weaving in the future I envisioned, a future of acceptance and connection. Embracing our past doesn't mean rejecting change. It's about honoring where we came from while understanding that we can grow as a family. I observed a flicker of uncertainty dance in Jane's eyes. The tight line of her mouth softened for the briefest moment, showing signs of vulnerability amidst the unresolved tension. It was a powerful realization that perhaps there was room for growth, not just for Robert, but for all of us. As the evening progressed, I felt the invisible wall slowly start to dissolve. With Robert's presence beside me bolstering my courage, I drew upon the energy swirling around us. In that moment, I allowed a sense of hope to flourish, believing that our family bonds could indeed be recalibrated. Later, as we cleared the table and everyone settled in, I repeated to myself, "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." My resolve felt not just renewed but tangible. I realized that we had the power to create the family legacy we longed for, one stitched together with love, understanding, and the beauty of our shared histories. I had ignited a spark that night, a seed of change breathing life into our family dynamic. Though I knew this was only the beginning, each conversation felt like the first steps on a path to reclaim not just my dignity, but a brighter future for all of us. As the next family gathering approached, the air vibrated with unspoken potential. Each day filled me with anticipation and a hint of trepidation. What had started as a battle for my voice was evolving into a quest for our family's identity. I stood at the brink of transformation. On the day of our gathering, I woke early, the rising sun spilling golden light into my kitchen. The table, adorned with memories, would be a canvas of our shared history. I placed an intricately designed menorah center stage, symbolizing the light that could pierce through our shadows. As the afternoon faded into early evening, I prepared our cherished dishes. The aromas of rosemary, garlic, and citrus wafted through the air, infusing warmth and connection into the space around me. I understood that this gathering was my chance to cultivate a new family narrative. When the doorbell rang, a thrill of nerves coursed through me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward to greet Robert, who entered with an enthusiastic hug. "Mom, it smells amazing in here." His warmth filled the room, soothing my jangling nerves. Just as my heart began to settle, Jane walked in, her presence charged and commanding. "Hope you don't mind I brought some things," she stated, holding a thin box. "Of course not, Jane. We'll make room." My smile was open-hearted, longing for her to join the warmth burgeoning within our gathering. The atmosphere shifted with laughter as we shared old family stories. I noted Jane's laughter sounded less forced, almost genuine, even as the tension beneath the surface remained palpable. As dinner progressed, I felt we were approaching a pivotal moment. I invited Robert to share what he valued most about our family traditions. His response mirrored the hopes I had nurtured. "I love it when we're all together, laughing and being ourselves." Seizing the opportunity, I added, "And it's essential we honor those traditions while making room for growth." I turned to Jane. "Can we balance change with our roots?" Her brow furrowed as she processed my words. I sensed an opening, a moment where growth felt possible. "Perhaps I've been too rigid," she admitted, a quiver lacing her voice. Cheered by this flicker of vulnerability, Robert echoed, "Change is important for all of us. This could be about learning together, not just fighting each other." The air felt electrified, alive with possibilities. I could see Jane grappling with her defenses, weighing her identity against the warmth building among us. "Maybe," she began, uncertainty lacing her words, "maybe we can create a home where everyone's voice matters." I held my breath, the room's energy shifting as her walls began to crumble. "Can we commit to making this a space for every story? Together?" I pressed gently. In that moment, our collective breath felt sacred. Hesitation hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. Jane's rigid stance began to soften, revealing a glimpse of the connection we all craved. As each of us exchanged glances filled with understanding, I realized how far we had come. Reclaiming dignity wasn't just about my voice, it was about reshaping our family narrative, a shared story woven with threads of resilience and love. I smiled softly. Let's make this a space where all of our stories matter. Together, a sense of unity enveloped us, wrapping around each heart in that room. The tension that had plagued our gatherings began to evaporate, a clear signal that we were ready to turn the page on a shared chapter. It was evident that this gathering was no longer simply about food. It symbolized revival, a new opportunity for connection. My heart swelled with hope as I glimpsed the potential for a brighter future, a family alive with acceptance, laughter, and love. In that moment, I realized we had the power to change the narrative, creating a legacy that would be shared through generations to come.